going to jump right into business today. I want to say welcome. This is day 2 of our graduate school application series hosted by SF Build. My name is Sonny Vernard. I'm a program manager with the SF Build program, which is a joint partnership between San Francisco State and UCSF. And the idea is to increase diversity in the biomedical science fields. So today we have 2 things in store for you. One, we have a panelist of amazing graduate students, which I'll introduce shortly. And we'll keep the conversation going with them for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then after that, we'll transition into one-on-one breakout rooms with the PhD students to talk through some of the graduate school essays that you all wrote up. If you didn't write an essay, that's perfectly fine too. You can talk to the PhD students about tips on getting started. Maybe you're not sure on how to get started. You can talk to them about that. Maybe you just want to talk to them about their specific programs and stuff like that. You can talk to them about that as well. Okay, without further ado, I would like to start with our graduate panel. So I'm going to introduce everyone. First off, I'd like to introduce Derrick, who is an SF Build scholar and an alum of the program, and he's also a current medical student. Next up, I'd like to welcome Jesslyn, who's helped so much with these graduate school application series. I've seen you at least 2 or 3 times, Jesslyn, so thank you so much for being a returning guest. Jesslyn's a PhD student at UCSF. Next up is Darnell, who's a DDS and a PhD student, so dentistry student. So that's a different experience. I know some of you might be interested in dentistry, so he'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. And then our last panelist is Jasmine Sims. I don't see her on right now, but she's an SF State alum. She's in the UCSF Tetrad program. She's also big in BSTEM at UCSF, and she was also big in BSTEM at SF State. So what I'll do right now is just ask a few questions of our graduate students. So it's just Derrick, Darnell, Jasmine, and Jesslyn should just have their cameras on. And I'm going to ask them a few questions, and feel free to ask questions in the chat. So, okay. So first up, I want to ask each one of you, where are you originally from? What did you study in undergrad? And what is the current graduate program you're in right now? So I'll start off with Darnell.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Darnell, as Sonny mentioned, and I'm also really impressed you knew how to say my last name, by the way. But I'm originally from Las Cruces, New Mexico. It's a little city in the Southwest, if you will. And I studied biology at the University of New Mexico, which is just 3 hours north of where I grew up. And my current graduate program is, as Sonny mentioned, it's a dual degree program. So it's a Doctor of Dental Surgery, or DDS, and my PhD program's in Oral and Craniofacial Sciences. And this may come up later, but our program's laid out with doing our PhD first and then dental school.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, Derrick.
Hi, everyone. My name is Derrick originally from Cameroon, and that's in Central Africa or West Africa, depends. I studied at San Francisco State undergrad. Well, I started at community college, then I transferred to San Francisco State and studied biology with a concentration in physiology. I am at SUNY Downstate, State University of New York, Downstate in Brooklyn. I'm an MS1, so I finished from Downstate 2019, finished from SF State 2019, and then I got a post-bac. I did a post-bac / master's here at SUNY Downstate, and then I got into the School of Medicine.
Awesome, thank you. Jesslyn, would you like to take the floor next?
Hi. So my parents immigrated to New York and I was born there, but I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. And I also went to undergrad within 3 hours of where I grew up at a small, primarily undergraduate school like SF State. It's called Winthrop University. And I studied chemistry there. And currently I'm a rising fourth year, or sorry, started my fourth year in the tetrad molecular and cell biology PhD program here.
Awesome. Thank you. And now on to you, Jasmine. I don't know. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I heard the question.
Okay, cool.
Thanks. So hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine. Let's see. So I started at San Francisco State University. So I did my undergrad and grad career there for my master's. And so now I am, go Eagles, hey teacher. And so now I'm at UCSF. I'm in the tetrad program here, and I am a third year.
Quick question. Since we throw out acronyms a lot, right? What is tetrad? What does that even mean?
Right, great question. So tetrad actually means it's like a culmination of all these different programs, right? So we have biochemistry here, we have cell and molecular bio, as well as like genetics. And so it's kind of like this far more like this mix of these different types of disciplines.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then the next question I have for you is, did you take, any of you, did you take any time off from earning your bachelor's degree before starting your graduate program? And if you did, like, why didn't you just jump right into grad school? Anyone can take it.
Yeah, I did take a year off. So yeah, I think 2020. So I graduated from SF State 2019. Then I took a year off. I continued working. I used to work as a CNA. Then I work in biotech for a while. And then after that, I got into the post-bac program for a year. Yeah, so it wasn't really by choice. It was just based on the circumstances available. I mean, the choices available to me at the time. Yeah, but I did take, I think, 2 years after getting my bachelor's.
Got you. Okay. Anyone else?
So for me, I ended up graduating my master's, and pretty much like the literal weekend, or I guess I finished that Friday, and then the next Tuesday I started at Genentech. And so that was an internship, and then I went straight into my PhD. Do not recommend, just because like the shift in environment, they're both kind of like running environments, and I never really gave myself that time to like rest, which is I highly overlooked. It wasn't advice that I was given before. It was just people were like, oh yeah, make sure you take this time. And I overlooked it. So just relaying that same advice to take a little bit of time. Yeah.
Okay. Jesslyn or Darnell?
I didn't take a year off, so I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this question. I graduated in 2019, and I maybe took like a month off before I moved out to San Francisco and started graduate school. But I would echo what Jasmine said. It goes a little unsaid in how beneficial I bet time could be, because it is a huge difference from undergrad to graduate school.
Great. And then Jesslyn?
I also came straight from undergrad. Yeah, I feel like I've oftentimes reminisced about what sort of, I don't know, amount of growth and reflection I could have had I taken some time in between. But I would say like, yeah, it could be like really beneficial, but also like, I was in the McNair Scholars Program and at my institution, and so the mentors that I had through that program, it being like one of the trio programs, and really wanting to encourage students to go into graduate programs and to go directly is like part of like what is being encouraged. So I think reflecting and talking to my mentors through that program was like one of the reasons why I felt that it was like a good choice for me. But definitely like in grad school, I've like come to realize that it like either way, like there's like pros and cons to both.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm glad that you're all kind of like sharing your different perspectives because, sometimes we feel that we do have to go right away. But as Derrick, like his situation was different. Sometimes, we have to take care. A lot of us are first generation college students. We have to take care of our families and stuff like that. So sometimes we got to work a little bit. And, right before we go into graduate school. So it's okay. There is no one right path or another. So thank you all for sharing that. And like before I jump into the next question, since the audience have been asking questions already, and I don't want to lose track of them, I'll start off first with Joseph and ask his question. How did you decide on the current graduate program that you're in, and how much of your decision was based on the institution or a supervisor fit? Joseph, what do you mean by that? If you wouldn't mind open up I don't know what you mean by supervisor fit.
As in, when searching for a PhD program, did you reach out early to specific PIs saying like, oh, I'd love to work with you? As in, was it the institution and the program description as opposed to somebody you actually like really wanted to work with, if that makes sense?
And anyone can take that question.
I'll probably just go first. As a medical student, you don't really have a choice. You just hope you get in. But I was just like waiting for an acceptance anywhere. But I definitely think that one reason I moved to New York was because the school, Sonny Downstate, is in Brooklyn. It's in East Flatbush, and it takes care of like underserved populations, which is like something that I was doing at SF Build. So I was very excited to come here. But usually for most medical students, you just like try to go where you get accepted or which school is the least expensive. Yeah. That's
Anyone
what
anyone else about your decision process of picking your programs?
Yeah, I could talk about my process a little bit. Similarly, what Derrick said, kind of when it comes to dental school, you kind of go where you get in. But especially when I was applying to these dual degree programs, there aren't a lot of them. So I think one of my major things, especially when I was just applying, was like really just seeing what the institution is based on, like what kind of research they were doing. And that kind of helped my decision in kind of narrowing down where I want to go because my research interest is more material science. So I wanted to go to a place that had that. But I think when it actually came down to deciding where I was going to go, I think it was based on how I felt when I interviewed and met the faculty as well as met the students. I'll speak from experience here at UCSF, because our cohort is so small, there's 20 people total in the program. I just felt like this was a really great place and is really supporting. And just even the faculty, even though they're not my supervisor now, I felt like they're really going to be there throughout this 8-year-long program. So I think it was more of the institution as a whole when I was applying, but then actually being here was what really made me want to come here. And then the supervisor fit kind of just came along after I was already here.
Thank you. Anyone else want to take the question before I move on to the next one?
Yeah, I'll take it as well. So I'd like to echo some of their sentiments. I think for me personally, it's slightly different just because like a PhD program, it's just generally, of course you're applying like a whole bunch of places and still the same sentiment that you want to get in. I think it's also just kind of like making sure once you have your pool of schools where you get in, it's making sure that you fit in that area, right? Because it's not just like I'm going to go to school and then school is going to be my whole being, right? You end up living in that environment or that area. And so then it becomes things like, well, which one has not only research that I like, but which one has like food areas that are nearby that I'm going to be able to like eat at, So things like that happen as well. But those are after you've already compared all the research and you like the research and you're stuck on these like 2 schools, which one do you choose? And then ask around about the PI, right? Because you might really like their research, but what if they're a jerk? So definitely do your tools or your due diligence, like asking about these people and because it works both ways. It's you getting the information you need to be successful. Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree that to echo Jasmine, that like considering your quality of life and what you want out of, whether you're spending like your 20s or 30s, or if you started a family and you're trying to like raise a family in a location like where you see yourself being happy. Like some people want to be in a big city, but some people like don't want that, and they want to be in a more like, closer to nature, smaller town like type of place. I felt like that was really good advice when I was applying, to like think about like where like geographically you would be happy, and then also be able to find like a support network. Maybe it's being closer to your family, or just around like communities that you feel like you'll be able to get support from. And also kind of along what Jasmine also mentioned, that like Tetrad, for example, is an interdisciplinary program because there's lots to choose from, like lots of kind of fields that get grouped and can like converge together. So that's also what drew me to apply. There are a lot of like other schools that have interdisciplinary programs. There are some schools where the programs are much more like specific, or like the program itself is specific. Like for example, if you want to apply specifically to a neuroscience program, then you're going to be taking like the classes that are going to be really specific to neuroscience. But if you apply to like an interdisciplinary program, the courses and the labs you have to choose from can be like, across lots of different fields. So it depends like how specified you want to get, or like maybe how broad. Those might be some good things to keep in mind.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. And another question that we have from the audience is, are any of you working while you're in your current graduate programs? No, we have two head shakes. No one's working. Okay, so you're staying busy with your coursework. Okay, for all of you, grad school is very busy. You've got a lot of coursework to take care of. So it's very difficult. And I'm not sure. I don't have a PhD, but I know that in my master's program, sometimes they just wouldn't let us work. Same for like law students. They wouldn't let them work the first year. It's kind of like you got to focus, like, make sure you kind of get through. So I don't know if that's the same case for you all. Do they tell you that you can't work whatsoever?
I think in med school, I know like some people who work, some of my classmates who work, some of them work like 10 hours, others 20 hours. It just depends how comfortable you are with the material. Yeah, but most people do not work, but there are people who have like jobs, and especially with COVID, people working remotely. But in my case, I don't work, but I did have a chance to earn income while doing research. So that's one thing. When you're in med school, you pay tuition compared to a PhD where you get paid. So I did some research, and then I was paid. I was given a grant, which kind of helped me financially. But there are different ways you could earn money. You could tutor, you could work at the student center, you could work at the library, but they have regulations on the number of hours you can work on campus. So some people work like, I think it's like 20 hours per semester, but there are people who work out of campus, and yeah, they have like a different way of doing their things. I don't know, but some people do, some people don't.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then I have a question here from Lonnie. If a program doesn't allow for a break in between undergrad and postgrad, what would be the best course of action? I'm not sure that's the case. I'm not sure a program can't tell you that you can't. I'm not sure a program can do that and say that you have to go straight from undergrad to postgrad. I've never heard that for graduate school, but maybe you all have heard something different. Okay. All right. So yeah, Lonnie, it's really up to you. And it really depends like on your certain circumstance. Sometimes people do need to work before for a variety of reasons. Maybe they need money and stuff like that to take care and support themselves. Other reasons too. Another reason that you may want to work after undergrad, like maybe potentially you don't feel like your GPA or something is the best like in the world and stuff like that. And one way that you can make up for it is by gaining like work experience and stuff like that. And that could help strengthen your application to show like, hey, maybe I didn't do so well in classes or whatever, or a particular class, but here I am able to be successful in my work profession. So I can do the work, you know? So it's a variety of instances, but no school actually tells you that you have to go straight from undergrad to a graduate program. So you wouldn't have to worry about that. And then the next question comes from Lorenzo. Lorenzo, you can turn on your mic and ask your question.
Okay, so I had a question for Derrick, because I know you mentioned you got a master's, and I was wondering if you feel like the master's helped you get into med school, and if thinking of getting a master's before med school, do you think like there's specific ones one should go for before applying?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. The master's did help just because the master's was in physiology, and it was given in conjunction with medical students. So it's like so I got into a special program, like, you know, you have SF Build. I got into like a special program where we got a master's, and then pending on having at least a B average on our master's, we got to get admitted into the College of Medicine without submitting MCAT scores or whatever. So I applied to the program, and then I got accepted, but I had to like have a certain grade. But there are a lot of my classmates who didn't do that. They had like masters in other fields. In general, people just want to have a master's so they can increase their science GPA. So anything with the science background is good. My MPH, MS, and anything that's just gonna increase your science GPA, that's gonna help you. That's what people usually do. But there's no specific masters that I would say it's more beneficial, unless the masters you're getting is being taught by a College of Medicine, which makes it helpful because you share the same faculty, if that makes sense.
Oh, makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next question I have here from Elazar is, can you have multiple scholarships, or do you just have to stick to one to fund you?
I could answer this. Yeah, you could definitely have multiple scholarships. And I think while you're still in undergrad, like a year before, you could write a fellowship. I guess scholarships and fellowships I'm going to use interchangeably here. But you can kind of have this one called the National Science Foundation. I don't even know the whole acronym, but it's called JRFP. But you could have one of those, and if you had this type of like funding, you look even more like attractive to a school because you're basically coming with money. And then while you're in your graduate program, you can apply to any fellowship that you really want or different scholarships. Because one, it just helps you have more money. And then two, kind of helps you build your CV and ultimately helps you look more competitive after you're done with your PhD and looking for jobs and things like that.
Great.
Sometimes for PhD programs, some fellowships might have policies that specify that you can't take them simultaneously, and perhaps you can like delay getting one or the other if the policies are like you can't have them at the same time. But as Darnell mentioned, like you can also just, even if you are forced to like not accept others because one has a policy that you can't be under any other, you can still like definitely put on your resume or CV that you got this and that you were awarded, but you just didn't accept. So.
Okay. Next question is comes from Miss Glenn here. If you're not working, if you all are not working, where do you get your funding from for things like housing, travel, family, and healthcare? Yeah. So where does this money come from since you guys ain't working?
I'll go first. So for med school, you have to basically take out loans unless you go to NYU, which is free. But I think most schools you have to take out loans, or some people live with their parents. I live by myself. So taking out loans, just trying to piggyback on the scholarship thing. I applied for a grant, I got a little bit of money. So that's what I've been doing. Anytime I have a project I have to work on, and then I could, like the institution I'm working with might have a grant to support me. It's not a lot of money, but it helps like with food. Yeah, so most people take out loans for med school, unless you're MD PhD, where the PhD program pays for everything.
All right. Our PhD students?
For me personally, so no, I haven't taken off any loans for my PhD. I don't plan to. So basically, part of the way that I chose a school was I looked at the region and I figured out if I would afford it, right? So then if you say this is my school, right? Then you say, okay, so let me budget that, right? What is a monthly stipend that they're giving you? And then how do you subtract that out for like how much are you gonna need for food and all these things? Once you do that, then you can figure out how much money or how much wiggle room you'll be able to have to actually live there, which is nice. So by doing this by the different schools that you're interested in, you can kind of figure out how big the struggle is going to be, or like some people, like you don't really have to struggle, so things like that are helpful. UCSF pays a lot of money, not like a lot, but like it's a lot more than some other institutions. So yeah, not super struggling in that department.
Any other responses, or was it pretty similar? Go ahead, Darnell.
Yeah, I just think it's important to, just because I do know what it's like to be, I guess I don't know what it's like to be a dental student, but I do see the dental students as well as like kind of being a dual degree. So most dental students will basically take out loans to be able to cover their tuition as well as their living and all their other things. But in a dual degree, kind of what Derrick said for MD PhDs, it's similar for DDS PhDs where basically everything's covered and they give you a monthly stipend that, as Jasmine mentioned, I think is really good, especially for the institution and living here in SF as well. So that's how we get paid at least.
Okay, great. And then, go ahead, Jesslyn.
I'll just throw in that most or a lot of grad programs that are funded like in the STEM fields will include like healthcare as a benefit. So I have healthcare through my grad program. Yeah, and like I think stipends school to school, depending on like cost of living for the area, are like for the hours worked, which normally like a lot of grad students put in like over 40 hours, like over a normal work week, it could be like sort of close to like minimum wage after tax, depending on like what area. So like in SF, like in Tetrad, I think this year's stipend is between like 40 and 42,000. And we do pay taxes on those. And so after tax, and then if you factor kind of in like how many hours like we actually work, it's like somewhere around 20 an hour, which is like this much above minimum wage in the Bay Area. But it's like, so like part of that is like it's livable and like, more livable based on like the sacrifices you're willing to make. Like, for example, housing with multiple people versus like living alone. So like, picking and choosing like what you're willing to give up to like be able to save more and have more spending money or not. But generally, I think grad programs offer an amount to at least get by and be able to like pay for food and like traveling, during holidays and things like that.
And Elazar has a question. I'm not sure if any of you will know this, but if you're married, will your kids and partner be eligible to receive health care and stuff like that? I'm not sure if programs pay for that. Not on the master's level, at least.
So for PhD, so I don't know specifically about UCSF, but I know Stanford actually they will pay for their partners, and so there are certain benefits that they can get as well. I think for UCSF there were like gym membership things or certain like oddball things, but you define what a partner is. So like you said, someone that you're married with or someone that you have like a domestic partner, but it's that you've lived together with a certain amount of time and that you can show that you paid shared bills with, or like bills within certain names. So when you have like reached those types of categories, then you can claim different benefits, which is pretty nice.
Thank you. All right, and feel free to keep asking questions. Like in the chat, we've got our PhD students in there. They're more than happy to answer your questions. And then the next question I have, prepared question I have is, what are some obstacles you each had to overcome to become the scientist that you are today? Did you always know you're going to be in a PhD program and get into med school? Was that, was that a given for each of you? Okay, I see a lot of heads no. Share.
Sure, I could start if you like. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had I think some struggles to actually get to the spot that I am. I think for me, particularly like the PhD route, no one in my family is a scientist. I'm a first generation student, so like going to college in itself was hard and confusing. But even then, like even though I saw a lot of my peers doing research or talking about research, I just had no clue what it was or how to get involved with it. And even then, just like working as many hours as I was during undergrad, which is 40 plus hours a week to basically be able to live and pay for school at the same time. It was kind of hard to navigate that and even like get into the understand what research was and how to get into a lab and all those things. But I think one of the biggest things for me and one of the best resources was just really getting immersed with the university and looking at all these different resources that they have to basically help underrepresented students get access to research. So at the University of New Mexico, they have a program called MARC, which some of you guys may have heard of. And I was a MARC student. And I think that was like a great opportunity for me to alleviate some of the working hours that I had at, for instance, like Panda Express is where I was. So take hours away from that and be more time in lab and really getting a really fulfilling experience of what it meant to be a scientist and really propelled me to apply to PhD programs and go down this route.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share before we move on?
Yeah, I'll go. So for me, it was hard. I wasn't born here. I moved here by myself, so it was definitely very difficult. I don't know how I did it. I don't remember. It's a blur. I don't want to think about it, but I think SF had a huge role in that. At those who go to SF State, introducing me to research. I did research at UCSF. I got published, and then that like helped me even get like research experience here, because when you send your resume, that Sonny helped me with. Everybody's like, oh wow, UCSF. So that helped. What else want to say? I think, what was the question again?
What are some obstacles you had to overcome to become the scientist that you are today?
Oh, okay. I think the biggest obstacle for me was the MCAT. I didn't like they have the critical analysis and reading section thing. That it's I think it's very, if you didn't go to high school in the US, or if you didn't have some sort of liberal art education, you wouldn't do well on that section, and that was like really hard for me. So I would score well on other sections, but then that lowered my MCAT score a lot. And also when I just moved to the US, I wasn't coming to college, and everybody looks down on coming to college. So even though I did okay, everyone was thought like, oh, he wouldn't come to college. So I think that was like a downside. People didn't think my grades were good enough. I mean, I go to school, I have classmates who went to Ivy Leagues, and they have like way lower GPAs than I have. But because they went to an Ivy League, it's like it weighs it more. So just the fact of going to public school was also another negative factor in my application, I think.
But you're able to overcome that and get into medical school at the end of the day. So
yeah,
great.
All roads leads to Jerusalem.
I was actually going to add on to that as well. So one thing that he said, and I like really want to echo, is that like sometimes it can be anything that might be like a negative, right? Like some things just kind of like bounce off. Like if you think somebody thinks something, and then you see it, like it goes like, and then that's how imposter syndrome like happens and kind of keeps you down. But you also have to remember, like, you're here for a reason, right? And so somebody saw something in you to even be, for master's or whatever program, your letter writers, they're agreeing because they see something in you. So if you take anything that I say from this, I hope you take that. But yeah, so that, and also people always assume that you have support when you get to where you are. For me, initially I did my master's, and so my dad didn't want me to do a master's. And I have other friends whose parents or, whatever, didn't want them to do that. My dad wanted me to, like, he's like, oh, you spent all this time in school, great, go get money. He was supportive, but he kind of saw it as like, didn't make sense, right? But it wasn't until my master's was actually paid for. So I was part of Genentech Scholars at SF State, and then eventually I went on to CCC, which is Center for Cellular Construction, stuff like that. So all of these things basically paid for my schooling, and then that convinced him, like, oh, okay, so it's not a loss, and so sometimes you have to learn how to keep going even if you don't have the physical support, which is sometimes hard too, because it makes you like step forward and then back and forward and back. So like eventually he supported, but things like that, I think it's your mental fortitude and your ability to push yourself on a daily basis. And yeah, you can do anything, but yeah.
Thank you. Right. And then the final question I have here for you all is what's some advice that you'd like to, some general advice that you'd like to share with the students who are on here on the call about, when it comes to graduate school and applying and the whole process?
Applying, maybe like I'm the only MD student here. Applying to MD is like, I think it's very different from PhDs. I think we have like one portal where we send in our applications, and that gets sent out to different schools. Compared to PhDs, I think you have to send an application to each school, if I'm correct. That's one. It's more expensive. You don't get flown out for interviews and stuff. You have to pay for your stuff. You have to pay for the applications. They run like $200 a school. It's difficult. It can be very discouraging, especially when you don't know people who have gone through the process. Like I didn't know anyone who had been admitted to med school until I was doing research at UCSF, and then my mentor introduced me to somebody else who had just gotten in. But prior to that, the whole application process, I didn't know anyone. So that was kind of discouraging and challenging. But if it's what you really want to do, like I'm having the time of my life in med school compared to undergrad. Seriously, you meet people you like, people who have the same vision as you. You have friends you study with. People just get you. So if it's really really what you want to do, you're gonna find a way to power through. But I will not. No, I don't regret going to med school. It's fun for now.
Anyone else with advice, tips?
So I feel that most people here probably face an abundance of obstacles. Like for me, it was also being first generation, where like neither of my parents went to college or like high school, and also we didn't like have like there wasn't any like money for me to go to like undergrad, like things like that. And so like even getting to this stage of like considering grad school, I think like it, like part of like the challenges that like I would face, I would like get that imposter syndrome of like, oh, can I actually do this? Can I actually fit in? I didn't even know what a PhD was before I started college. But then like now being on the other side, I've like realized that like, I think like grad programs, like whether they're like med, I can't speak too much like for med, but even just grad, like school PhD programs like are looking for students and value students who are like willing to like break past barriers and overcome adversity. And like so in applying, like like write about it in your applications, like discuss how you've overcome challenges and like the obstacles that you face and like what your goals are and like what you aspire to and what you're passionate about. And I think at the end of the day, like that is something that like like no one can take that from you, and like you don't have anything to like to prove like at that point when you're like like you're being ambitious by like applying, by putting yourself out there, by being able to like talk about your obstacles and like how you've overcome them, and that you like have this aspiration to go to grad school. So yeah, like owning like like how far you've come and speaking to those aspects, I think like is like a really big strength that like can like probably hopefully captivate like admissions committees for wherever you're planning to apply to.
Great.
I was going to say, adding on to that, talking about the specific process itself, make sure that you have a system, right? Because basically you're applying to a whole bunch of different, whether it's PhD, whether it's MD, whatever. But for us, I know that like, for me specifically, I applied to different types of programs, right? So not only did I apply for biochemistry, I also applied for like cancer programs. Some of them were like umbrella programs. Some of them were like BME, biomedical engineering, right? And so I needed to keep that straight for each different application. And then they also ask you to choose the mentors from each program. So then you would have to know that, like, so all of this is a lot. I'm saying this to say, like, use a spreadsheet. It saves lives. And it also lets you know, if you put it right, how far in the process you actually made it through for each school. So then that way you know what you have to do, and then set that time out to be able to do those things. Definitely makes it easier. Contact letter writers ahead of time. They need time. And yeah, I think that's, I also referenced like a ruler thing, right? So a lot of times when you write your SOP, like
What's SOP?
standard of, oh gosh,
Statement of purpose. Yeah.
It's been a while, sorry. So if you basically talk about like your obstacle or the thing that you overcome, which a lot of schools do, that should only really be like maybe a few lines, right? But you have a whole entire document, or even if it's a certain amount of characters, it should be a certain percentage of those characters. That being said, if you spend too much time talking about your obstacle, to them, it seems like you haven't overcome your obstacle. And so you're less likely to get picked. So I'm saying that to say, whatever your obstacle is, you want them to see that you've overcome that obstacle, right? You want them to see that, like, yeah, this is something that like was really crappy that happened to me, but look at all of the things that I did despite that. And so I call it like a ruler or a ratio thing, because you want it to, yes, it hurt, yes, it sucked, but like you did all of these other things in between. So make sure that they can see like how awesome you are, all the things that you've done. Yeah.
Go right ahead.
I could just end, I guess, here. I guess the question was any advice or inspiration, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just like, I know it's easy said than done, but just always like know things are going to work out, stay positive. I know how stressful and daunting applying to graduate school could be, and you're like, oh, imposter syndrome kicks in, all those different things, but I'm more than confident in everyone to hear that you're going to have multiple interviews, and the hardest choice you're going to have is deciding where you're going to live and what school you're ultimately going to choose. And I think just one last point of advice, I think, so like choosing and things like that is just when you go for interviews, and or even if you're just talking to yourself, it's just, I think, be true with yourself about why you're doing what you're going to do. I think that's very important because in the long run, when things do go down, you always think back to that moment, like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. So keep that in mind.
All right. Can we all give a round of applause for our outstanding panel here? Please, thank you. All right. Thank you so much for sharing, so much like wisdom and the different programs that you're a part of, taking the time out of your busy schedule to, join us today. I know you all were excited, to come and impart your wisdom on the SF State students. We really appreciate each and every one of you for doing this. So thank you. And then like what I'll do for the students who are on the call, if it's okay with you all, I'll share your email contact information in case folks have questions for you afterwards. It's very important to, stay in touch. So I'll distribute that afterwards to each and every one of you via email. So, but thank you again. And right now we're going to transition to the next part of our session today, which is the one-on-one sessions with the PhD students. But before I do that, just one quick announcement. Diane shared an opportunity. So for anyone interested in the biomedical science program at UCSF, and the developmental and stem cell biology program, there's going to be a graduate information session on November 16th from 9 a.m. To 11. You can register like on Zoom and stuff like that. And I'll send like an email flyer about that. Also, I'll be advertising about this on social media. So if you're not familiar, our social media is at SF Build. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter as well. So you can also get that information there. So it's a great opportunity if you're thinking about a PhD program and, those areas. You'll get to talk with, I guess, someone who's involved in admissions. So I hope you take advantage of that. All right. So now we're going to be placed in breakout rooms. So if you submitted a draft essay to be reviewed with a PhD student, you're going to have an opportunity to go to a breakout room right now. Kenny and Gian have been working diligently behind the scenes to help set up the breakout rooms. So we're going to get those started and you just accept to join. If you were unable to get a draft ready today, that's perfectly fine. We have PhD students who will continue to support you. So we'll also assign you to a breakout room. And here, like if you're a little nervous, if the reason you didn't have a draft in today is because you didn't know where to get started, because that could be daunting in itself. The PhD students are more than welcome, more than happy to share some advice and tips on how to get started. And in addition to that, this time is about you. So you don't even have to ask about that. You can ask about their specific programs, what they're about, what kind of research they're working on. They're here to, talk to you and work with you. So we're gonna get that started like shortly. Kenny and Gian, can you please, start putting folks in breakout rooms?